Welcome back to episode 2 of the American Revolutionary series. Last time we were here, we ended on the bleak note of the Boston Massacre, and with it, it marked the first ever conflict and the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The riots continued, and a specific group, no, not the Beatles, the Sons of Liberty were at the helm of such coordinated actions. Many of their protests included destruction of properties associated with the crown, public demonstrations, and worse of all, tar and feathering. Yes, they actually rolled around traitors in tar and dumped feathers on them as a threat to others. And guess what? It worked. Sorta. The British repealed the Stamp Act and victory was attained by the colonies. Yay! No, not quite. Some taxes were still in place, and the lack of representation was still prominent amongst the colonies. However, one tax hit a bit too close to home. The one thing people associate more with the Brits than the royal family is, well, tea. I mean, they've got thousands of varieties, am I right? And with the Tea Act of 1773, the Brits were in the real hot water. And this led to one of the greatest occurrences in American history. On December 16th, 1773, Sam Adams and other members of the Sons of Liberty dressed up as Native Americans, and I kid you not, dumped 92,000 pounds of tea into Boston Harbor. And not a bag of sugar in sight, because guess what? The Brits taxed it too. These demonstrations represented a new sense of unity and desire for a common goal. This allowed for the first ever Continental Congress to assemble in Philadelphia in 1774, and for the first time the colonies agreed universally for a common and brighter future. Except Georgia. I don't know why. This newfound ideology of liberty and independence fueled the first ever conflict that was on April 19th, 1775, and with it, the Declaration was adopted as the final stick-it to Great Britain. Written by Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, John Adams, and Robert R. Livingston, the Declaration is the physical embodiment of these emotions and felt before with a pinch of spite towards the Brits. Summed up in the lines, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So profound. Now the battles, because that's the only reason you're still here after that jibber-jabber of philosophy. Let's go. The Battle of Lexington and Concord, known to many as a shot heard around the world, was fired on April 19, 1775. And the British forces raided Boston town and left with barely their teeth still intact. Keep in mind, most of the soldiers on the American front were not trained militants. They were mostly farmers and fishermen, and the equipment they used were mostly outdated duck hunting tools. Compared to the might of the Prussian and British army, the Continentals were severely outnumbered and outgunned. To get the necessary supplies, however, the Sons of Liberty, swoop in just like superheroes, don't they, raided Boston and New York armories to attain the required equipment. Another famous battle is that of Bunker Hill, where the Patriots suffered heavy losses. The Continental Army teamed with the old Native American tribes and elders and seized major forts including Cumberland, Lindsay, Anne, and Henry. Now, the Battle of Long Island sparked an important instance in Britain's claim of the island of Manhattan, an important strategic point for the Continentals. As 32,000 troops surrounded New York Harbor, George Washington had nothing to do but retreat west. The British seemed to have the upper hand for most of the fighting at this point, and as they've reclaimed many lost grounds, including the forts of Cumberland, Washington, and Lee. It took one man's bravery, leadership, and rallying up of his troops. They wanted to desert camp due to the horrible conditions, lack of food, and ill-sighted future that awaited towards the end of the war. Just between you and me, this just goes to show Americans have no inhibition to awake on Christmas morning, cross a frozen river, and kill you as you awake. They've done it before, and they'll do it again. The crossing of the Delaware marked the first major victory of the war for the Continentals and a new sense of hope amongst the Patriots. Armed with the leadership of Washington and the military mind of Marie Joseph Paul Yves Roch Gilbert du Motier de Lafayette, That's a long name. The American soldiers fought for another 4 long and harsh years until Yorktown, October 19th, 1781, where the British forces, along with Lord Cornwallis, who made the terrible decision of setting his troops on a peninsula surrounded by the French Navy and the rest of the Continental Army, signed the final peace treaty, and with it, what many Americans can consider, because historians believe that the war was fought around the world and this was only the end of the battle in the South and the North still had conflict going on, but who cares about that? It's about what Americans think. They note this as the end of the Revolutionary War in Yorktown on 1781, and freedom was attained by the Patriots. Thank you. We'll see you next time.